Episode 103. You've made it, whatever it may be.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
And here we are, to episode 103 of the very best podcast in the world, your only source in the universe for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. Today, we're going to be talking about a more complex issue. We're going to be talking about it. And in a weird context, it can be pretty much anything. And I'm going to reference my personal story as a, reference point. I think, would be most appropriate to say, in that I did retire or semi-retire quite early in life. I think it was somewhere around my mid-30s. And interesting things happened until that state. And in that context, I want to talk about what it was for me and how I made it. And that it isn't necessarily a constant factor, but it can actually change. So now that I've confused you enough, let's get started. Right? Again, defining it is entirely up to you. And again, it's not a fixed constant in your life. It can change. And so therefore, let's get to the point where it changed for me. So for the most part of my life, growing up in parts of my life, my teenage years in the United States, I was totally capitalist brainwashed, right? So life for me was about getting rich and working hard and, then reaping the fruits or, whatever you sawn. And so that for me was kind of like being rich, maybe even being famous, but it wasn't really about anything else. Those were all byproducts. So with else, I mean health, for instance, feelings like love, compassion, and whatever, they just didn't really fit into that equation, right? And so therefore, I was hustling always. So I started a career in the financial sector. That's all, history. Then I went on into the internet and software development and consulting. And then in consulting kind of came the epiphany for me, which was that I was in the first class lounge in Dubai, on the Emirates first class lounge. If you've never been there, it's like this really, really, really long separate floor that you only, or, without some exceptions, only have access to if you're traveling first class, obviously. And that was kind of like my go-to place. So you had you came into the lounge. The first thing you got a dude that, did the shoe shine thing. Then you would travel another 100 meters and you would get by the spa parlor where they offered you a complimentary massage. Then you went through several a la carte restaurants, most of them which were empty, and you could order anything that you needed. And then at the end was my paradise, the Smoker's Lounge, which was, kind of like this godforsaken, well, not godforsaken place. It was, as all other parts of the lounge, very clean, very hospitable. And due to the fact that it was open towards the ceiling, you could kind of look down at the other travelers who were, commuting to get their next flight, et cetera, et cetera. And, everything was good and dandy. So I was sitting there in my probably very expensive leather recliner, smoking a cigarette, ordering my drinks, and was on the phone with a friend and speaking German while on the phone. And after I'd finished the call, this dude walks up to me, and he looked, classical business dude type, suit and, your suitcase and all that good stuff. And so he sat down or he asked if he could sit down, and he heard, under the pretense that I was speaking German and he was German as well. And we got into polite conversation, had a few drinks together, smoked a few cigarettes together. And we, inevitably, in all conversations, you get to the point where you talk about retirement. And so this dude said, well, yeah, when I retire, I think he wanted to keep bees or something. And, kind of slipped my tongue that I said, well, you ain't got that much longer to go until retirement. And in awe, the guy looks at me and says, I'm 53. And I'm like, oops. Anyhow, during the course of the conversation, I kind of figured out that he was traveling even more insanely than I was, which was difficult. And that lifestyle in itself took its toll on him, because he looked 10 years older than he actually was. Yeah, the smoking and the alcohol did their bit as well. Let's not pretend. Let's not play pretend. But at the end of the day, the guy left because he had a flight to Shanghai, and I actually forgot where I was going. And he did, Dusseldorf, Shanghai, at least twice a month, more often than not 3 times a month. And then he had flights inside China and so on and so forth. So the guy was, really, really, really busy traveler. And long story short, he got up, he left, and I started reflecting. And I was like, okay, I was, I don't know, my early 30s at the time. I said, okay, look, you've got another 20 years to look like that dude. And I was kind of weighing in for myself and saying, do you want to look that way in, 20 years? And I said, no. So I called up my finance dude, and I said, look, if I quit today, could I survive? And the guy was like, obviously looked at his watch, and he was like, dude, you just fucking woke me up. It's early in the morning here. I don't know. So I said, okay, open your laptop and look. And so we had a rather silly talk over, half an hour, where we analyzed everything. And then he said, no, you can't. And so I said, okay, how much longer do I have to work? How much more do I need? And we came to an amount X. And keep in mind, this was about survival, right? This is about not being able to, do large trips or whatever. This is what you would refer to probably as a basic income. And that's where I wanted to go. That was my goal, and that was it. I had rediscovered it. Because of this guy that I will be eternally grateful for. I must admit, I forgot his name. But he showed me that what I was aspiring to as a young dude was really something that I wasn't willing to pay the price for. And that's what I meant by it can change. And that's where, things kind of start to, get out of proportion. I realized, that money and the fame, wouldn't compensate for the harm I was causing my body and soul. I was single, no kids, no real attachments. I was piling up money left and right. But it's like this stupid saying, money doesn't buy happiness. And to a degree that was true. So I continued on working, etc. Then, came the point where I could retire, not entirely, but retire from actively seeking jobs and only doing those jobs coming towards me, and actively rejecting those that I felt weren't really fun or compelling to me. So I ended up not being rich monetarily, but I get by very well. And I have the most important thing in the world, which is family and time for family. And that's what I think it is for me. And I think, for those of you listening and contemplating, particularly in these times, whether or not you need to readjust it, do so, think about it. The only thing or the only commodity you can't get back, or you have a limited supply of, is time. And that's, I think, the point that this episode is about. Whether or not you've made it, and if you haven't made it, then to adjust it, perhaps, and reevaluate it and see whether it actually still fits your life. And I think we'll conclude on that. So, have a good day. If you haven't, if you know someone that is in a position that needs to kind of reevaluate their just share this episode with them. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, do so now. I will bug you at the end of every episode. That's new in 2021. Pretty much the only thing for now. And so successful day. And those of you who've already had your successful day, have a good night. And we'll be in touch tomorrow for the next episode of the very best podcast in the world. Stay tuned. Peace out.